Masechet Menaḥot Daf Mem Aleph. We continue the laws of sisit. Tenor Banan Talit Kefula Hayevet B'sisit V'Rabbi Shimon Poter. If you have a cloak that's folded, in other words, let's say it's a very long garment, and if you wear it, it's like that, it's too long, it'll drag on the floor. And so the person who owns it folds it in the middle and wears it like that, folded, so it'll be double ply. Tanakama says you have to put sisit on the new four corners. So that means the edge where originally was the edge and is doubled over. So you have the four corners, each of the corner is matched up with the other corner. On that edge, which is the actual edge of the garment, you'd put only two sisiyot on those corners. There's really four corners there, but they're doubled up. So two out of those four, you put tzitzit on. And then on the crease, on the fold, that is now a new corner. And therefore, you'd put tzitzit on those corners where near the crease, and you'd have tzitzit there. And then you'd have a four-cornered garment, even though it's not the original four corners when you stretch out the garment completely, but now it's folded. So now it's a folded garment that has four new corners, so you'd need a sisiyot on the four corners of that garment as it's folded. However, Rabbi Shimon Poter, he says, no, you don't need that. You would have four sisiyot on the original garment. You fold it in half. The fold, on the fold, that's like a temporary fold. That's not considered a new four-cornered garment with the crease having new corners. So no, you don't have to put sisiyot now on the place where the fold is. Now, even though they disagree on that case, v'shavin she'im kefala utvara shechayevet, if you folded it and sewed it together, so now you sewed the edges together. Now it's actually a two-ply garment. Now this is not a temporary fold. Now you're permanently sewed it. If you had a garment that had multiple layers and you sew them all together, obviously that's one garment. You have to put sisiyot on the new four corners, and so everyone agrees that if you sew it shut, then it's a new garment, and you have to put two sisiyot on the original corners and two sisiyot on the now new corners where the fold is. Tefara peshita. Now the Gemara says, if he sewed it, obviously this is now a new four-corner garment, and you'd have to put sisiyot where the fold is. What's even the chidush? La sericha de nakta besiche. No, the chidush is, even if you don't sew it entirely, but you just fasten it with pins. You put a couple of pins there, so that's not really permanent, like sewing it shut, but that's sufficient. It's not just folded that it could come apart in 1 second. If you put pins there, then that's sufficiently considered shut, and everyone would agree that you have to now put sisiyot at the place of the fold, because that's now the new corners of this garment. Rabba bar Huna ikla lebe Rava bar Yaakov bar Rav Nachman Chazye dahava mikaseh talit kefula verami le hute ilave kefela. And now a great story about Rabba bar Huna. He went to the home of Rava, the son of Rav Nachman, and he saw that the homeowner, Rava bar Rav Nachman, was wearing a talit, a cloak, that was folded over because it was very big. And he put sisiyot on it. He's following Tanakama that says you have to put sisiyot. So which means he had sisiyot on the place of the fold. So it's two sisiyot on each edge of where the fold is near the crease. And then he had two sisiyot at the edge on what was originally the four corners. Two out of those four had sisit on it, and the other two had nothing on it. Okay, so he's wearing it like that. If shita ve'ata huta ve'kam lehadeh resheh. Now, as you can predict, as you're wearing something and you're moving around, so it's natural that the garment unfolded, and now the string that was at the crease now ended up near his head. In other words, if you fold something and you put it over your around your shoulders, so then where the corners are, the original corners, that'll be, let's say, on the left side, near his hand on the left side, and then the folded part, the crease will be near his right hand. But once it gets unfolded, so now where the crease was moves up and towards his head. And so now if you'd unfold it and wear it like that, now on his right side or left side, he'll have two sisiyot. On the edge that's on his right side, have no sisiyot. And instead, the tzitzit that he put on the fold will be in the middle of the garment, which is now where his head is. And so now, this is no good. Amar le, lav hainu kanaf, techatab rachamana beoraita. Rabba, bar Huna, the guest says, this is not a corner that the Torah spoke about in the Torah. Look where the corner is. It's in the middle of the garment, at your head. That's not where it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be at the edge of the garment. So you see, when you just make a fold in a garment, that's not a permanent situation. It's because it unfolds so easily. So you should not put sisiyot in the middle of the garment, where the fold was. Rava, when he realized that, he threw off the garment because actually at this point it would not be kosher. Because now, it has sisit in the middle of the garment, but those don't count for anything. And now it has the original actual four corners of the garment. Only two have sisit and two don't have sisit. So it doesn't have proper sisiyot. So he threw it off him because it's not allowed to wear it. And now we see something very interesting. Rabba bar Huna says, what, you think if you throw it off, now you're exempt? Do you think that the mitzvah of sisit is an obligation on the person? And if you're wearing it, you have to put the 4 sisiyot. And then if you're not wearing it, you just put it away in the closet and you don't have to put sisit. Is that what you think? You think you're exempt now because you took it off? Not true. Chovat talitu zil remeh la. The mitzvah of sisit is a mitzvah on the cloak, on the garment. If you own a garment that has 4 corners, you must put sisit on it. Even if you're not wearing it, even if you're not planning to wear it. You own it, you could wear it, sometimes you wear it, you have to put sisit on it. So, not good enough that you took it off. You still own it. You still have it. It's a garment that you like, that you would wear. Therefore, you have to go put sisit. So this is kind of quite an amazing concept and a very important distinction, machloket, between the mitzvah of sisit. Is it only if you're wearing it, or even if you just own such a garment, you have to put the sisiyot on it? Lema mesaya le chasidim arishonim kevan shargu bashalosh hayu matilin batechelet. Can we support this view of Rabba bar Huna that the sisiyot are chova on the talit? Because we already saw a braita of the early pious sages. They would put sisit immediately on a garment as soon as they weaved it, while it's still on the loom. Now we saw a reinterpretation, because here it sounds like if you just weave 3 etzba'ot of it, just the beginning, you have a corner. You have 2 corners, but you didn't do the rest. It's still very small. They already put the chelet on it. So we said, no, it can't be, because that's too small to require sisit. So it must be that when they finished the last 3 tefachim. Okay, so either way, the point is that while it's still on the loom, before it's ready to actually be worn, before anybody's actually going to wear it, they already put the sisiyot on it, and they put the techelet on it. So you see, they must have agreed that the mitzvah of sisit is on the talit, and therefore we don't want to go 1 second after completing the talit. We don't want to go 1 second without sisiyot on it. So isn't this a good proof? We say not necessarily. Shanei Chasidim, the Mahmiri Anashayhu. The Chasidim are different. They're stringent upon themselves. That's why they did it. They were very zealous for the mitzvah. They wanted to put sisit right away. But in truth, maybe the halacha is actually only when you're wearing it, then you have to put sisit on it. But if you're not wearing it yet, you could wait. Ufeliga de malacha. And this opinion of Rabba bar Huna, that sisit is the mitzvah on the talit, is against the opinion of an angel. Now, we don't usually decide halacha based on an angel. However, we do have a fantastic story here about an angel who discusses this topic. De malacha ashkache lerav ketina de mikase sedina. Amar le ketina sedina bekaita vesarbela besitva sisit shel techelet matehe aleha. That there was an angel that came and visited Rav Katina. Rav Katina was wearing a linen cloak. And a linen cloak, you do not put techelet on it. He may have had linen strings on it, so he had some sisit, but not techelet. Because then it gets into a problem of shatnez, because techelet is going to be wool, and the linen is going to be, and the linen is linen. And so we saw before that some opinions say, do not put techelet on linen. So he did not put techelet on it. And then he said, the angel said, Katina, Katina, you wear a linen garment in the summer, and you wear a rounded garment of wool in the winter. So in the winter, you're going to wear wool, but you round off the corners so that you don't have to put tzitzit. So you find a way all year, summer and winter, to avoid wearing techelet. So tzitzit of techelet, what are you going to do? What will be with the mitzvah? Why are you avoiding it? Okay, it's expensive. You have to buy the techelet. It's hard to do. And he found a way, legitimately, to avoid wearing techelet. And so Rav Katina responds to the angel. What? Think just because an angel said it, he has to be right? An angel is just another opinion. So he says, Amar le, anshitu ha'aseh? Are you going to punish? Do you punish even for not doing a mitzvah aseh? Okay, it's mitzvah aseh to wear techelet. If you're in the situation where you're wearing a four-cornered garment made out of wool, and then you have to put techelet. But if you don't have that situation, do you have to go out of your way to do every mitzvah aseh? I mean, if you don't want to eat meat and you see an animal, you have to go do shechita to fulfill the mitzvah aseh of doing shechita. You don't have to do something if you're not in a situation like that. So, what, I should get punished for not doing something that I'm not in a situation where I need to? And the angel said, well, the way it works in heaven is, you're right. You're not going to deserve a punishment most of the time for not doing an aseh. However, when there's a time of anger and judgment, when Hashem is in an angry mode, or when you do something that would prompt inspection, you're in danger, or something else you do that's bad, and then say, oh, what else does he do? He does, look how he avoids putting on techelet on his yisit. Then, yes, together at that time, you may very well get punished for avoiding the mitzvah aseh of the mitzvah of techelet. Now, that's the story. Let's analyze. If you say that the mitzvah of sisit, and here techelet specifically, is an obligation of the person, well then that's why the angel says you are liable, because you did not make sure that you are fulfilling this mitzvah, right? You're not going to wear techelet, not in the summer, not in the winter, never. You're always avoiding it, so you are not fulfilling an obligation that you can do. On the other hand, if you say that this is the mitzvah of sisit and techelet is an obligation on the garment, so, well, he doesn't own a garment that has four corners, that's wool. So he doesn't own it at all, so it never comes into play at all. So therefore, he should not be obligated, he should not be required. It's like, do I have to go buy a field so that I can leave a corner of the field for the poor people? No, nobody would say that. If you don't own a field, then you're exempt from the laws that have to do with the field. So too, have to go buy a talit so that I can put tzitzit on it? I understand if it's an obligation on the person, a person should say, I want to make sure that I fulfill this obligation. You have sukkah. Okay, if I don't eat, I don't have to sit in the sukkah for the rest of the days. Okay, no, but don't avoid the sukkah. Go, it's an obligation on the person. Fine, that makes sense that you should not get out of mitzvot. But when it's an obligation on the thing, on the item, so then you don't say, oh, you have to get at that item so that you could do the mitzvah. So therefore, you see that the malach must assume it's chopat gabra, and he disagrees with Rabbah Bar Huna that says it's the mitzvah on the item. Ela mai chopat gabrahu. Okay, so now you're trying to say that this story makes sense better if it's an obligation on the person. Nehi de hayever hamana ki mikase talit bat chiyuba ki mikase talit la bat chiyuba hi me mechayever hamana. This still wouldn't explain why you should get punished. We understand that Hashem obligates a person if he wears a garment that is required, has four corners and all that. It's made out of wool. But if he wears a garment that is not required in tzitzit, what would Hashem cause him to tell him he's obligated and give him a punishment if he's not wearing such a thing? He doesn't wear such a garment. So what's the problem? He likes to wear linen. In the summer, it's hot out. He likes to wear linen. And then in the winter, I don't know, his coat, his favorite cloak, happens to have round corners, so he doesn't have to. Why should he be punished? What the angel was actually saying is, I see that you seek ploys, you seek loopholes to exempt yourself. It's not just that you happen not to have such a garment, and you just don't wear such garments because of other reasons. I see from the fact that in the summer, in the winter, you're always finding some way in order to avoid techelet. You're doing it specifically, finding loopholes to avoid techelet, not because it just didn't happen to come your way. And therefore, you should get punished. And so since that's the reason that the angel is rebuking him, actually we can't tell from this story whether it's because it's a chobat gabra or a chobat chefsa. So we cannot actually prove that the angel would disagree with this halacha. Amar Rav Tuvi bar Kisna Amar Shemuel Keli kufsa hayavin besisit. Shemuel says that garments that you store away in a box, in a drawer, you have to put sisit on it. So you see, according to Shemuel, it is in fact the choba of the talit. Just the fact that you own it, you have to make sure that it has sisit on it, even if you're not wearing it. But Shemuel agrees that if there's an elder person who doesn't have a long time to live, and he wants to prepare a burial shroud, then it has 4 corners, and he says, I don't want to put sisit on it because I'm planning on wearing this while I'm alive, and person's only obligated mitzvot while they're alive. So why? So then he doesn't have to, even though he owns it, and the mitzvah of the talit, but that's only if it's a wearable item, and this is going to be a burial shroud. So what's the source? Because it says you have to put sisiyot, gedilim ta'aseh lecha, ta'aseh lach, you should put gedilim, tassels, on any garment, asher techaseh ba, that you plan on wearing. That you're going to wear, but that means wear while you're alive. And this is I'm not planning to wear while I'm alive, and therefore he doesn't have to put sisit, and Shemuel would agree with that. But the Gemara notes that when the time comes and a person passes away, he has a garment, we actually do put sisit on it, because of the pasuk, whoever mocks a poor person blasphemes his maker. If someone buries a person without tzitzit, it's like making fun of the person. Haha, you can't do mitzvot anymore. Look, we're even going to bury you in a 4-corner garment without tzitzit to show you, see, you're not alive, you don't have the opportunity anymore. That's not respectful. It's not like this not nice, poor guy can't do mitzvot anymore. It's bad enough that he died. They have to make fun of him too. So we put sisit on it and we bury him with the sisiyot. So although he is not obligated to put it on while he's alive, because he's not planning on wearing it while he's alive, but the Chevra Kadisha does put the sisit on it. Amar Rachava, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, talit shenikre'a hus l'shalosh yitpor. Toch shalosh lo yitpor. Let's say you have a kosher talit with sisiyot on it, and now it gets a tear in it. Depends where the tear is. If the tear is beyond the 3 tefachim, in other words, it's a big tear, let's say a whole corner of the garment, it is torn off, but it's beyond the first 3 tefachim, so it's more than 3 by 3 squared of the corner, falls off together with the sisit on it, so then you can sew it back on. However, if it's a small piece of the corner, less than 3 tefachim, the tzitzit has to be within that 3 tefachim. And so less than 3 tefachim is a very small amount. So let's say a small amount gets cut off. With the tzitzit, you cannot simply sew it back on. The idea is as follows. If it's a big piece, so then it retains its own identity as, this is a piece of this cloak, right? And so it's clear that this is a piece of the cloak. It's a significant piece, and it fell off. It got torn off, sew it back on, and that's okay, because you're just reconstructing the cloak as it was. So it's not called ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui. It's not a problem of asui, because originally was part of the cloak. And you're just mending it. That's okay. However, if only a small piece of the corner is torn off, that small section, less than 3 by 3 tefachim, is not significant in and of itself to retain its identity. Now it's just like strings that fell off, and you can't just reattach it, because then that would be attaching sisiot from another garment. If you took sisiot from another garment and took the corner and attached it to a new garment, that would definitely not be good, because that's ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui. Tanyana mehachi, we have a braita that backs up this statement. Talit shenikre'a chutz l'shalosh yitpor toch shalosh Rabbi Meir omer lo yitpor chamim omrim yitpor. So again, you have a garment and a part of it is torn off. If it's torn off beyond 3 tefachim, so that the torn part is more than 3 tefachim wide, then you put it back together. That's okay. However, if it's torn within the first 3 tefachim, a small amount, then actually, according to this paraita, it's a machloket. Rabbi Meir says you cannot put it back on. Chachamim say you can sew it back on. So the proof for Rabbi Yehuda is from Rabbi Meir, actually, not from Chachamim. Chachamim would disagree, but Rabbi Meir is significant enough, so Rabbi Yehuda can follow Rabbi Meir. ושבין שלא יביא אפילו אמה על אמה ממקום אחר ובה תכלת ותולה בה. However, Rabbi Meir and Chachamim agree that what you cannot do is bring a corner from a different garment. You had another garment that had sisiot on it, and if you'd cut off a piece of that garment, even if a big piece, even 1 amma squared, and you take it from that garment and then you sew it on to a garment that doesn't have sisit, for sure that's not good, because that's min ha'asui. So the distinction is as follows. If you have a garment that's kosher and has all 4 corners and sisiot, if that very garment tears and a big piece falls off, you can put it back on because it's originally from that garment. So that's not called min ha'asui, because you're just putting back together a garment that was originally whole. And so this sisit was originally put on to this garment for the sake of this garment. So it's ta'aseh, that's good. And now that it got torn off, but it's a significant part, so because it's a significant section, it's still called a corner. So it still retains its identity as a corner. It's a corner of this very garment. So you can reattach it. That's okay, according to Rabbi Meir, according to everybody. Actually, if it's big, right? If it's big, everybody agrees that you can you can sew it back on. However, everybody agrees, even Rabbi Meir, that says if it's small, you can't put it back on. That's because when it's small, it's not called a corner anymore. So then it's like reattaching. It's like attaching sisiot that are already wound up and just attaching it from the top. So that certainly would not be good. However, if that's if it's small, and everyone agrees also that if it was on a different garment, it wasn't part of this garment. So now you took a corner from a different garment, even if it's a big corner, and put it on a different one. No, these sisiot were not tied for the sake of this garment. So that's called min ha'asui, and it's no good. Everybody also agrees that something you can do is you can remove the techelet or any of the strings from another garment. You untie it from a garment where it was tied, and then retie it onto a new garment. That you could do, because again, that's not a problem of ta'aseh ve'lo min ha'asui, because you're tying it again. So the problem of lo min ha'asui is if you take something that's already tied, cut off a whole corner, and then reattach the whole corner. Then it's already been tied somewhere else, and you're putting it on a new one. But if you undo it and retie it, you say, I don't want that garment anymore. I want to wear this garment. I only have one techelet. It's expensive, so I don't have another string of techelet. I want to reuse that one. You can untie it and retie it onto a new garment. But that's only if it's not broken. If it's broken, it's going to be too short. Remember, the halacha is that when you first make it, the sisit, the strings have to be of a certain length. If after you make a kosher talit, you put all the sisit on, then one of them gets cut, as long as still enough left that you can make a slip knot, that's okay. So that's fine after you make it, but not when you initially put it on. So therefore, let's say you had a talit, you put it on, everything was good. One of them got cut. Okay, it's still good because enough to make a knot. If you untie that one and now put it on a new one, but now it'll be too short for an initial tying, so you have to make sure that it was not broken. Shamat mina matirim lebeged lebeged. Wait, can we learn from this source that you can take sisiot, techelet, off of one garment and put it onto another. We're going to see in just a minute that there's a big machloket about this. So, but they don't bring this as a source. So, is this a definitive proof that yes, you can do it? We say not necessarily. Dilma dei belai. Maybe it's talking about if the old garment got worn out. That garment is not wearable anymore. Okay, if it got worn out and it's not wearable anymore, then everybody would agree, even the opinion that says it's not respectful to remove a techelet from a garment. If it's worn out, then it's okay to put it on a new garment. Tenor banan, talit shekula techelet, kol minei sib'onin potrin ba, chutz mikala ilan. If you have a garment, and the garment itself is all entirely made out of techelet, that's okay. You still have to put sisiot and techelet on it. So in that case, you would have to put techelet, let's say it's wool, so you put a string of techelet on it, and then the other ones don't have to be white. See, usually we say you're going to put blue strings and white blue techelet strings and white strings, because usually we have a white garment. Most garments were white. So the halacha is that the non-techelet string should match the color of the garment. So since a garment is usually white, the other strings are usually white. However, if you have a garment that's entirely techelet, then the techelet string is already matching it. So good, you fulfilled with one string both techelet and the law of matching. Because it says hakanaf, it should be from the same color as the kanaf. And so how about the other strings? The other strings you can make any color you want, as long as you don't make it kala ilan. You don't make it indigo, because indigo is the fake blue. It looks just like techelet, but it's not from the snail. It's from a plant, and this you cannot put the indigo next to the other one. We're going to see that it can come to a mistake because a person might see it and not know that one of them is techelet and one of them is kala ilan. He'll see it on, he'll think that they're all techelet, and then he might later on remove it and use it as techelet. So therefore, do not use kala ilan. Don't use indigo for any of the strings, even though the other ones can be any color you want, but just don't use indigo. Metibe. We have a challenge against this baraita from another baraita. Metibe usually is asking an amora from a baraita, a higher level authority. Here it's actually two baraitot, so this is a bit unusual usage of metibe. Here it says talit en poter ba elamina. A talit, the strings have to be of the same type, which in some contexts it means of the same material, but here is referring to the color. It has to be the same color. So you need techelet, but you also need other strings that are the same color. Fine, that's if it's white, makes sense. Talit shekula techelet, maybe techelet v'davar acher v'tole ba v'kala ilan lo yavi v'im hevi kasher. Now, if you have a garment that's entirely made out of techelet, then you bring a string of techelet. Good. Now you fulfilled techelet, and also that it's the same color. So you fulfilled that. And you have to bring another color. The other color that could be anything. Could be white, could be green, doesn't matter. However, kala ilan, do not put indigo. As we said before, if we stop here, this baraita is in agreement with the one before. But then it says, bidi avad, if you did put kala ilan on it, it's still kasher. Well, over here it says bidi avad is okay. And over here he says, it's no good. So how do we resolve this contradiction? Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, la kashya, kan betalit bat arba'a chutin, kan betalit bat shemona chutin. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak explains, no, there's no contradiction. This, but the second baraita that says b'diavad it's okay, is when you have only 4 strings altogether. 4 that then you fold it, doubled 8. You have the minimum amount of strings. In that case, you can, don't put kalailan, but if you do, it's still okay. Why? Because it has 4 strings there. Since it has 4 strings, nobody's going to take one of those strings and reuse them because you need it for this talit. I mean, if it gets worn out, you might reuse it. Okay, but that's an extreme case. But generally, no one's going to take these. You're gonna see them and you'll use them. Even if you do, if it gets worn out, you'll take all 4 and you'll put it on something else. That's also okay if you put it on another blue new garment because you have one of them is techelet and the other ones are indigo, so they're kosher. So that's okay. You don't have to worry about it. The first baraita that says it's no good at all, even b'di'avad, that's talking about a case where you put extra strings on it. You can put extra strings. You're not allowed to put extra sisiyot. You're only allowed to put 4. You can't put 5. I want to put 5 sisiyot. There's Baal Tosif. However, adding extra threads is okay. And if he adds extra, he has 8 threads, doubled into 16. And so now he has some of them are techelet and some of them are indigo. That is not allowed. Because you have extra threads, there it is likely that someone will say, oh, I just bought a new garment. I need some techelet for it. And he'll see this garment has 8 of them on it. It doesn't need 8, it only needs 4. And then he'll go and undo those strings and take some of those 8. He might take one of them or 2 of them. Now, he doesn't really know which ones he's taking. He's going to assume that they're all techelet, and he's going to use one of the indigo strings as techelet, and that will be really confusing. He'll end up having a new garment that doesn't have techelet on it. He doesn't know it's actually indigo. So that's the reason of the first baraita, when you have extra strings, that's when you cannot put indigo. Even b'di'avad, it's not good. But if you have just 4 strings, then no one's going to take one of those 4 strings only and use it on a new garment, and therefore you don't have to worry so much. Even here, lecha techila, don't do it. But b'di'avad, it's okay. Shemat mina matirin mibeged lebeged. Now, again here, what are you worried about? That you're going to take from one garment and put it onto another garment. So can't we now conclude again this machloket that we're about to see? Can't we bring this as a proof that you can remove from one and put it onto another? And the answer again is Dilma, the different answer here. Dilma di'avad. Here is b'di'avad. You're right. Lechatechila. It's not respectful to take off a string from one garment, even though you're going to put it on another garment. But we're talking about b'di'avad. If one does it, then if one does it without knowing the halacha, or he does it anyway because whatever, he doesn't want to pay for more techelet, then there's still going to be a problem because he's going to take it from the one that has extra, and he's going to think it's techet. He's going to put on a new garment thinking he has techet, but it's really indigo. So there's no proof from here regarding this machloket that we're now going to learn. Itmar, Rav Amar en matirin mi beged lebeged. Ushmuel Amar matirin mi beged lebeged. Rav says you cannot take a string off of one and put it onto another one because not respectful to take off sisiyot from a garment, not respectful. Shmuel says it's okay. It's true, you're taking it off from one, but you're putting it onto another. So now you want to wear this one, so you're still doing the mitzvah. Rav Amar en madikin miner lener. Ushmuel Amar madikin miner lener. We have a parallel machloket regarding Chanukah. On Chanukah, Rav says you're not allowed to take, let's say the 8th night. You have 8 candles here. And now, let's say you want to light from one to the other. Instead of using the shamosh to light them, one wants to take the one. Let's say you lit the first one. Okay, now you don't have the shamosh anymore. Can you take the first one and use it to light the second one? Just take the wick and extend it. Touch to the other one. They're all the same level of kedusha. I mean, what you can't do for sure is you can make use of the lamps for yourself. You can't light a cigarette from the lamps of the Chanukah, or even use the light to read from it. You can't use it to light up your stove, for sure not. But here, you're just using one to light the next one, and they're all kadosh. So Rav says, in any case, you're not allowed to use one to the other. And Shmuel says they're all the same level of kedusha, so therefore you can light from one to the next. So in both of them, you see the kind of parallel of using, just like Rav says, you cannot take one tzitzit and use it for another, even though you're using it for another same mitzvah. So too, you cannot take the fire from one and use it for another. And Shmuel says you can transfer the strings, and you can also transfer the fire. Rav Amar en halacha ke'Rabbi Shimon begerira, Ushmuel Amar halacha ke'Rabbi Shimon begerira. And another case where Rav is machmir, he's machmir in both of these cases, regarding Shimon's opinion of dragging something. If someone wants to drag a chair on Shabbat, he wants to have this chair and move it somewhere else, and by doing that, it's going to make a furrow in the ground. Well, you're not allowed to make a furrow in the ground. That's part of planting. However, here, davar she'eno mitkaven, his intention is not to do so. His intention is he wants to sit over there. So Rabbi Shimon says, davar she'eno mitkaven mutar. If that's not your intention to do a melacha, then you're permitted to do it. Rav says halacha is not like Rabbi Shimon, and therefore you're not allowed to drag something. And Shmuel says halacha is like Rabbi Shimon regarding dragging, and you are allowed to drag a chair or whatever item, even though it's likely to make a furrow. Amar Abaye, kol mile demor abid kedav, lebar mehane telat abid kishmoel. Abaye says, my teacher, that's Rabbah, he followed, in general, he followed everything according to Rav, except for these three cases where he was lenient and he followed Shemuel, specifically, matirin beged de beged, madlikin miner lener, v'alacha kerebi Shimon begedira. He ruled that one can take strings from one garment and put them onto another garment for sisit, and you can use one lamp to light the next lamp on Chanukah, and one can drag a chair and follow the opinion of Rabbi Shimon regarding dragging on Shabbat. Tanya, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Gorer Adam mita kiseh v'safsal but shelo yitkaven lasot haris. And we learn about Rabbi Shimon in the following Braita that says a person is permitted to drag a bed, a chair, a bench on Shabbat as long as his intention is not to make a furrow. I don't care about making a furrow. I'm not planting anything there. I just want to sit over there in the shade. That's permitted. Rav Yehuda masar le kasra. Now back to the sisiot. Rav Yehuda, when he wanted to launder his garment and it has sisit on it, he would give it to the laundryman. Now the laundryman, he's going to scrub and rub and smash it, and you might be afraid that through the laundry process, the sisiot might come apart. And if the techelet string comes apart, the laundryman says, oh no, this came off, and he'll replace it. But maybe he'll replace it with the cheap version, with indigo, and they'll give it back to you. Here, good as new. Yeah, it actually is new, but it's not kosher. But Rav Yehuda didn't worry about that. He gave it to a laundryman. He was not concerned that he's going to go and cause it, the techelet, to fall off and then replace it with indigo. He wasn't worried about that. Rav Chanina abed la sisa, Ravina chayit lehu mehat. Rav Chanina was more careful. He would give it to a laundryman also. However, first, he strung together the sisiot into a bundle so that they'd be protected while being laundered. He wound it up into a bundle. And Ravina would actually sew it into a little pocket, and so that they would be protected and they wouldn't get rubbed around and pulled on, so that it wouldn't come off, not only because you're afraid that the laundryman might replace it with indigo, also you just don't want them to fall off. You want them to be protected. You don't want the dye to come out, and so they would protect their sisiot and their techelet strings from the laundry using those different strategies. Tenor Banan, kama chotin hu noten, bet Shammai omerim arba'a, bet Hillel omerim shelosha. Now, how many strings do you need in the first place to put into each hole on each corner? Bet Shammai says 4. Bet Hillel says 3. We follow, interestingly, in this halacha, Bet Shammai. We put 4 strings. When you double them up, then you end up with 8 strings. According to Bet Hillel, you would need only 6. You'd need only 3. When you're doubled up, then you need 6. Machloket among the Rishonim of how many, we follow 4. How many of those 4 have to be techelet? According to Rashi and Tosafot, half of them. 2 of the strings have to be techelet and 2 white ones, and so when you double them up, it'll end up being 4. According to the Ra'avad, he says that only 1 of the strings has to be techelet, 1 entire string. So when it's folded up, it'll end up being 2. Rambam says no, only 1 of the 8. So actually, you take 1 of the 4 strings and you dye just half of it. And then you put it in the hole, and you end up having only 1 of the 8. Okay, so the machlok about how many of them are techelet. But the point is that all the Rishonim agree. We follow Bet Shammai, and we have 4 strings altogether, doubled into 8. וכמה תהא משולשת. בית שמאי אומרים 4, בית הלל אומרים 3. Now, how far do they have to be hanging after you tie the knots and the windings? Then you have the loose strings. How long does that loose part of the string have to be? Bet Shammai says 4, etzbaot. You see over here we had arba'ah, because arba'ah was going on the word hutim, hut, which is zachar. So arba'ah is zachar. Now here, arba is going on etzbaot. That's nekeva. So that's why he has arba is a nekeva. So even though Bet Shammai says arba'ah and arba, they're referring to two different things. Okay, so yes, according to Bet Shammai, they have to be a little bit longer, 4 finger breaths. And Bet Hillel says, no, they only have to be 3 finger breaths. Now, how big is a finger breath? ושלוש שבית הלל אומרים אחת מארבע בטפח של כל אדם. When Bet Hillel says it only has to be 3 finger breaths, what he means is actually going to be 1/4 of a tefach of a typical person. A tefach is a whole fist, which actually is 4 normal-sized, medium-sized fingers. So when he says a tefach, when he says a finger breath, he means actually 1/3, not 1/4 of a typical tefach. Amar Papa, tefach deoraita 4 begudal, shit biktana, 5 betilta. And in fact, there are different measurements, different ways of measuring how big a tefach is. The tefach that's mentioned in the Torah, you can measure it in 3 different ways. You could measure 4 begudal, 4 thumbs, where thumb is the widest of all the fingers, so it's 4 thumbs, or 6 pinky fingers, because that's smaller, which is equal, or 5 of the middle finger, which ends up being the same. So you can measure it in any of those ways and reach 1 tefach. This would mean that Hillel is using the thumb to divide the tefach into 4 parts, and he's saying it has to be 3/4 of a tefach, so that would be 3 out of 4 thumb widths. אמר רב יהודה, 4 בתוך 4 משולשת 4. ורב יהודה אמר 3 בתוך 3 משולשת 3. We already saw 2 controversies between Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai regarding the numbers 4 and 3, and now we're going to add yet another criteria that also has the same number. So Rav Huna is following Bet Shammai in that you need 4 strings, but now he adds also that when you insert the strings into the corner of the garment, it has to be inserted within 4 finger breaths from the corner, from the edge. And furthermore, as we said before, Bet Shammai says that it has to hang, the loose strings have to hang 4 finger breaths past the last knot. Rav Yehuda says, no, all these are the 3s, so he's following Bet Hillel, that says you only need 3 strings, and he's more machmir regarding the hole that you insert the strings into has to be within 3 finger breaths from the edge. And also, it has to hang down from the last knot, past the last knot, the loose strings have to hang down 3 finger breaths. Amar Rav Papa, Hilcheta 4 betoch 3 mishuleshet 4. Rav Papa says the halacha is like Bet Shammai, that you need 4 strings, but he's more machmir. He takes all the chumrot and says it has to be tied or inserted within 3 finger breaths from the edge of the corner, and it has to hang down mishuleshet 4 has to hang down 4 finger breaths past the last knot. Now we ask, this sounds like there is a minimum measurement, right? It said it has to hang down 4 finger breaths. So that means there is a minimum length. But the following baraita seems to say not so. Urminhu sisit en sisit ela yoseh, ven sisit ela mashehu. When it says you have to put sisit, literally tassels, that means the length of it that goes past the corner of the garment. If you put the garment within, let's say, 2 tefachim from the edge, so then the first 2 tefachim are going to overlap with the garment, and then whatever goes past that, you need to definitely go past that. However, sisit just means any amount, even a tiny bit past it, it would be okay. And in fact, the elders of Bet Shammai and the elders of Bet Hillel once went to the upper story of Yochanan ben Betera, and they said, sisit has no measurement. We assume that means no minimum measurement. So it could be even very small. Kayosebo lulav and boshiur, and also lulav has no measurement. So we're assuming that means even a very short lulav could be okay. Now you just said it has to be mishuleshet arba. So that means it's a minimum measurement. Now this baraita says no. My lav en la shiur kelal. When it says there's no measurement, doesn't that mean there's no measurement at all? No minimum measurement? Lo en la shiur lema'la val yesh la shiur lemata. No, what it means is that there's no upper measurement. The strings can be as long as you want. They could be 100 feet long. If you want, that's okay. It's still kosher sisit. But it does have a minimum measurement, as we said above. Because lulav is also connected to it. So what are you going to say about lulav? Are you going to say lulav has no minimum measurement? You could use a tiny lulav, but that's obviously not true because the Mishnah says, in Masechet Sukkah, v'hatanan lulav sheyesh bo shelosha tefachim kedei le'na'anea bo kasher. A lulav that has at least 3 tefachim, so that you can wave it, that's kasher. It has to be a minimum that. It can be bigger, but not smaller than that. Ela en lo shiur lema'la, val yesh lo shiur lemata. Hachinameh en lo shiur lema'la, val yesh lo shiur lemata. Rather, regarding lulav, it must mean that there's no upper limit. You can use a giant lulav if you feel like it, but you can. But there's no upper limit, but there is a lower limit. So too, regarding sisit, it means there's no upper limit in the length. It could be as long as you want, but there is a short limit. It cannot be smaller than the 4 finger breaths past the last knot, as we said is the halacha above. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.